everyone, my name is Kudzie Mapiye, and on this channel I do videos about my life living here in Australia, and I also share different life lessons that I've learned along the way. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 tough lessons that I have learned from living in Australia. If you have not been on this channel before, I have been in Australia for 16 years, and in those 16 years there are things that I have learned about what life here is like that I would love to share with anyone who's looking to move to Australia to live, people who are already living in Australia as immigrants, migrants. And this might resonate with you, or this might be something that you might find helpful if you haven't been doing that already. First tough lesson is how much balance you need to maintain when you are in Australia. Like, this is something that has been so consistent in my entire journey here in Australia, and that has been the ability to maintain balance, to make sure that everything, you've got your finger on the pulse with everything, because your own life, your bills, if you're balancing school, work. I came as a student, so I had to balance school, work, normal life, like everything needs to be in balance. Otherwise, like, things would just be chaotic. And the analogy that I have is when I was learning to drive, when I first learned to drive, I was learning to drive a manual car. Now, if you've ever learned to drive a manual car, you know that when you're on a slope, when you're on a hill and you don't want the car to roll over, you need to balance the clutch and the accelerator. It's like a delicate balance that you need to maintain so the car doesn't roll over. If those are a little bit out of balance, you see the car starting to roll over a little bit. Now, that's how life is like in Australia. If you don't maintain balance in all areas of your life, you will start to move backwards. And just some examples of that, if you're not, for me, I'm a mom of 2 kids that are different ages. My son is just about to turn 9, my daughter is 3. They have completely different needs, different activities. I have to be across what all the school emails that are coming through, the activities that they have to do, different things like book week, dressing up as what all those things. I need to keep on track with that, and I also need to be on the ball when it comes to work, when it comes to life, relationship, everything, managing the household, everything needs to be in balance. And you find that when you lose balance, there are times that I have lost balance many times in my life here in Australia. For example, even with the kids, if you stop keeping track of everything every email that's coming in, all the updates that are being sent from school, you start to find that you don't even know what's happening. So you need to be always, create time to really write things down, know what's what. And for us, what works is we always have notes on the refrigerator, notes on the fridge, what's happening where, what books, when the library books are due, everything that has to do with running of the household. We make sure we've got a list. And I also use my notebook in my phone. I have so many different notebooks for so many things around the house. Even when the last time this thing was cleaned and all that, I've got my calendar is used on a daily basis. I have to put things into my calendar, birthday parties, the kids need this, or they need to bring in this book, whatever it is. You just need to maintain balance in Australia, and you need the tools to have to do that. You need to be super organized. If you're a person who's not organized, it's a skill that you can get. It's not that you're born organized or you're not born organized. You can always train yourself to be organized, because if you're not organized in Australia, you will start to see it making an impact on your life, and overall it will have a major impact on your mental health, because you'll be completely overwhelmed with everything that is going on. And I think, comparing to my life in Zimbabwe, I found that in Zimbabwe there's a lot more help. First of all, maids and stuff like that. There's a lot more family help. And then when it comes to schools, a lot of people can just send their kids to school, like boarding school or day school. They just drop their kids off at school and then pick them up after school and might not be very aware of what's happening in between. The culture in Australia is that you need to be so involved in the day-to-day learning of your child at school. You literally feel like you are at school with them. Like, that's how involved you have to be. You can't just like drop them off and pick them up and not know what's happening in between. Like with my son, we have to check in, like what is he learning every day so we can follow up. Reading, all these kind of things, like what they're doing in the classroom, the things they have to practice at home. It's a lot to keep on top of. And you know, I used to get really annoyed at that at first. I'm like, I'm paying school fees so you can teach my child, not that I can teach my child or so that I can go to school. I'm done with school. But I've just learned that, hey, it's the culture, and you start to enjoy because you're kind of in touch with what your child is doing, which is a good thing. But it does take a lot of time, it does take a lot of energy, and it does take a lot of organization and balance for you to maintain that. And you know, whenever I feel like I'm maintaining good balance, I feel happier, I feel lighter, I feel more in control of my life. And when I start to feel like sometimes just getting sick can throw me out, because I can be sick, like, you know, flu season, anything. If I'm sick for a few days, it throws me out, it throws me off balance, and I have to, you know, come back on track and organize everything. Because if you're not keeping track of things like daily, and you know, having even the school uniforms at school, they don't wear the same uniform every day, they wear different uniforms on different days. So you need to know which uniform are they wearing today, what activity do they have on at school today. Like, it's a lot to keep, you know, to wrap your head around. So you really need tools to help maintain that balance. And that's been a tough lesson that I've learned. And I always find it interesting when people ask me, maybe they could be relatives, friends, or people who are subscribed to this channel, who ask like, is it a good idea to send my child to study in Australia? Or is it a good idea to move to Australia? And I always think, you know what, it's a good idea to move anywhere you want to move to, as long as you know what's required there. And you know, in Australia, balance and organization is something that you need to have if you're going to be happy, if you're going to have that sense of control of your life, if you're going to have that mental wellness. Because if you're not, like, I have seen firsthand people just crumble because they just can't keep track of everything that's happening in their life. And it seems like such a simple thing to do, but keeping track of everything, like especially if you've got additional responsibilities, like you're a mom, or you know, you've got a child or kids, whatever the case, if you've got those added responsibilities, it just becomes a little bit harder, and you just need to put in a little bit more effort to make sure that you keep things on track. So that's one tough lesson that I've had to learn, that you know, you can't slip, you need to maintain that delicate balance. It needs to be a daily exercise. Like, my daily routine just consists of me waking up and checking my calendar, making sure I know what I'm supposed to do, like if there's a special event, if the kids need to be wearing something special at school, all those kind of things, I need to document it, because I know the capacity of my mind. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I need to keep track of, and I just can't do it by remembering. So I need to write things down, and I always write things down, even at work. Like, when things are due, I've got so many spreadsheets that I run depending on what project I'm doing at work. And I have notebooks as well, because I find writing notes just helps me remember. So every day, in every meeting, I always go in with a laptop and a notebook, because I need to write things, I need to slot in things into my calendar if I'm meeting with someone, and I'm also writing notes of things that I need to remember to do. And sometimes I add sticky notes to that. So I'm just always like writing little notes, because I know that I need to keep track of things. And like, for example, at work, before I start the day, my routine at work is always check the notes for the day before, make sure I've cleared off the task for yesterday, and then I check my calendar for the previous day, check what I didn't manage to do, and then like roll it over. It's always a consistent, constant management exercise. So I feel like when you're in Australia and you're living life in Australia, you're basically a CEO, like you're a CEO of a large organization, which is your life, because your life just suddenly becomes a large organization to manage. And you really need to, manage that. And if it's not your strong point, I know people have strengths in different areas. If organization is not your strong point, don't worry. It's thing that you can always attain. It's something you can always practice to do. Write things down, and over time you'll find that you'll be more across things and you'll be more in control of things and know what's happening in your life. So that's one thing if you're looking to come to Australia, if you're in Australia, you already know. You need to just manage and maintain that balance. Second tough lesson that I learned. Now, this is a lesson that I learned early on in my journey in Australia. And let me tell you, it was a rude awakening, like I did not expect. I find that whenever you move from your normal setting, because I was obviously born and raised in Zimbabwe, like cushioned by my society, my community, and there are a lot of things that were just chugging along perfectly until I came to Australia. Australia was like a slap in the face of all the issues in my life. Like, I believe that everyone has a little bit of issues, a little bit of drama, a little bit of trauma in your life, be it from school, from family, from relationships, from whatever area of your life. We all carry something that we need to resolve. And I noticed that when I moved to Australia, like, I felt like all my issues just started confronting me in the face, because for the first time I was now separated from my comfort zone, and now I had to figure stuff out, stuff that I had stuffed in different boxes and drawers and tucked away in the corners of my mind. All that stuff started rearing its head, and I had to deal with so many personal issues. And it was really difficult, because I thought I was like, I thought I was perfect. I had no issues. And just being here and being alone and, not having your community that you're used to, things start popping up that you need to deal with. And let me tell you, if you don't deal with your issues will start dealing with you. So you need to start like really now looking at your life and saying, okay, now that's an area I need to address. That's a trauma I need to resolve. What was happening here? This wasn't right. So you start to deal with those issues. And it is really tough, because you're having to face it by yourself. Like, I don't know, there's something about isolation, because when you move overseas, you're isolated. There's something about isolation that just forces you to confront your issues. Like, you're just by yourself, you've got yourself, your mind is just you, and you have to face yourself. So I really had to face myself when I came to Australia. There were blind spots about my life, about my personality, about, just everything around me, that I just started to realize things that I needed to handle, resolve, and heal from, and all that. And if you don't deal with those things, eventually they will just start dealing with you, and you don't want that to happen, trust me. But yeah, I found that being in another country really forces you to do that. And it's something that I didn't expect. I just expected to move to Australia, have a jolly old time down under, like, it was not like that. Like, very early on, I think it was for me, that I started to see that I had things that I had to work out. And I think that it was the first time that I had the opportunity to actually reflect on different things in my life. Like, I never had that opportunity, because if you're just chugging along and everything is going okay, you're in your normal community, no one questions everything is normal, like, you're not forced to face anything. But when you start seeing a different way of life, when you start seeing things being done differently, you do start to question things about your life. And it can be tough. But the good thing is there's so much help available. Like, I always love to seek help from different sources, whether it's counseling, whether it's just like holistic therapies, whatever it is. I always like to explore different types of like help that's available to help me work through the things in my life. So that's something that I also found tough, and something that I'm still working on in my journey in Australia, because things always come up. But I'm also very grateful to have the opportunity to do that, because I think if I hadn't had an opportunity to look back and reflect on my life, and I had continued just moving along the way things were, I probably wouldn't be where I am, and I probably wouldn't be happy with my life. So yeah, that's one thing that I have had to learn in my journey here in Australia. And the third and final thing that, I found about life in Australia, and the things that you have, a tough lesson that I have learned while I was here in Australia, is the importance of planning. Now, when you move away from home, if you're living in another country, you need to have a reason that's worthwhile for you to say, okay, why did I move? You need to have a plan. And I've noticed that in Australia, basically, I think this is just life away from home. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a plan of action, a plan of things that you want to achieve, you will blink one day and it's been 10 years and you have nothing. You have nothing to account for. Like, you have nothing to say, over the past 10 years, what have I accomplished? If you're not careful, you need to have a plan, and you need to write that plan down. I think it's very important to write a plan, to have a plan and to write it down, to say, okay, I'm here, I moved away from my family, I moved away from everything that I know. Why did I do that, and what do I want to achieve? What's the benefit that I'm going to realize from being away from home? And you really need to have a plan and work to that plan. I know there are times that I've been so diligent with my plans, and then there are times where I've just been kind of chugging along and not really being mindful of having a plan. And when I compared those two phases, when I had a clear plan and I was working to a plan, I achieved way more things for myself in my life that I could account for, to say, over the last 4 years, look, I've done this, I've achieved this. And then there are times where I've just been living and I'm like, man, what, I haven't done anything much in the last year, in the last 2 years, because I haven't had a plan. And then you start to see, well, why do you then move? It's like you just moved to another country, you just inconvenience yourself for nothing, and you've achieved nothing from it. So it's always good to, be mindful of what your plan is. What's your plan of action? What's the benefit that you're going to realize from being away from home? Because if you don't, you're just going to be frustrated. You're like, why did I move here in the first place? So have a plan about what you want to achieve, things you want to own, places you want to go, like things that you want to get exposed to, anything that you moved here for. Or even if you just moved here and you didn't know why, like you didn't have a clear plan, it's never too late to establish a plan and say, look, this is what I want to achieve in this country. This is how I want this country to benefit me. Because let's face it, there are so many challenges of moving overseas, but there's so many benefits as well. But unless you're intentional about realizing those benefits, they're just going to pass you by, and you'll just be living day by day, and you just go back home and you have nothing to show for it. Very, very easy to do. So it's always important to have a plan. It's always important to go back to your plan and review your plan and see if you're on track with achieving the things that you have set to achieve. It's not all about just a New Year's resolution. It's about a plan that you're going to follow through, things that you want to achieve. And I always get like a lot of satisfaction and joy when I look back, because I write the plans in a book. When I look back at the book that I wrote my plans and I start to see the things that I'm ticking off on, I'm like, wow, there's actually a plan that my husband and I made. This was almost 10 years ago. We made that plan. We made those plans. We wrote them in a book. And it's this year that we're now starting to tick off on the plans that we made 10 years ago. But we've just been gradually working towards those plans. So it's a good idea to just have a plan, write it down, and work step by step to achieve your plan. Otherwise, you won't have anything to show for your life in Australia or your life overseas or away from home. So that's all I had to share with you guys. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you have any thoughts, any comments, please leave them down in the comment section below. I always love interacting with you in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.